it does the thing. Hey, welcome to a new, mostly unscripted video, where I'm going to be talking about the new blur features that have been brought to the RetroTINK 4K Pro. Now, if you like the whole composite blending thing, and you've kind of been missing that because you've been using component cables or RGB cables or even S-video cables for your system, this might just fill a void in your life. So the RetroTINK 4K Pro now has some new blur options. Now this is exclusive to the Pro model, not on the CE model. The main ones that I'm going to be calling out today are the elliptic filter and the notch filters. There's 3 notch filters at the moment. This is going to be great for systems like the PS1 and the Mega Drive if you consider yourself a composite connoisseur or a dither disliker. It's pretty easy to set up, especially if you have the 240p test suite. If you don't, you can also use a game that you know has pretty extreme dithering, something like Silent Hill or potentially the waterfalls in Sonic 1. But let's have a look in the 240p test suite, and we're going to start off with the Mega Drive. Alright, so here we are in the 240p test suite for the Mega Drive. We're going to go into the correct menu. I'm watching playback of myself doing this, but we want to be going for the checkerboard pattern, which is in the video tests menu. We're going to go 320 by 224, and what we're then going to do is go to advanced settings. Well, first of all, I'm going to set this to autofill integer plus. Then we're going to go to the processing and effects. We're going to set the horizontal kernel to, we're going to go bilinear soft, but I think later on in the video I do change this back to cubic, but you want this to be as soft as possible. So then we're going to move over to elliptic, and it's currently at, a low megahertz, but we're going to increase that up until the checkerboard pretty much becomes a completely grey image. It's not going to be perfect, but neither was composite, so don't worry about it. Get it as close as you can. It's not going to make a huge difference when you're actually in the game. You can see here I change it to bilinear soft. It makes an ever so slight difference. So the only other thing that I'm going to do is add some scan lines to this. Now they're going to be very subtle. This is currently set to autofill integer plus, so we should be getting the best quality that we can with scan lines on YouTube. So again, just setting up really simple settings here. So strength at 5, modulation at 5, and we're setting normalize energy to on. I could have gone further and added some, change the gamma to 2.4 in and out, but I forgot. And it still looks fine for the most part. So with that, let's just jump over into a Mega Drive game and we'll see how this looks. So here we are in Earthworm Jim on the Mega Drive. And we are into New Junk City, and you can see that the background has been mostly blurred. Now, this isn't going to be a perfect solution for removing dither, so you can still see some dither in the background, but it's a hell of a lot less than it would normally be with no blurring whatsoever. Even if you used composite, you would still see blurring or other kinds of artifacting. But the one thing that you're not going to see with this is the horrible rainbowing that you would normally see with the Mega Drive and its composite output. Get that cow launched. By the way, you just saw me change over from bilinear to cubic just to give a tiny bit of clarity. I feel like it's a good trade-off for blurriness versus actually being able to see what the hell you're looking at. You can never make that jump. Come on, second time's a charm. There we go, look at that. I've always found that the whip hitbox in Earthworm Jim, especially on the Mega Drive version, a little bit janky. It doesn't extend anywhere near as far as you'd think it would. Anyway, let's jump ahead to a little bit further in the game and we will see what that looks like. Alright, so here we are in the what the heck level. And the one thing that I want to draw your attention to here is the, the mist, the fog at the bottom of the screen. You can see that that looks pretty much perfectly transparent. Now you will notice that it causes weird artifacting with the graphics behind it. That's just because essentially everything behind those graphics are going to be half the resolution, because that's how the transparency works. And here we are in Green Hill Zone Act 2 in Sonic 1 on the Mega Drive still. We're going to have a look at those beautiful waterfalls that you can see here are perfectly-ish transparent. Look at that Sonic having a look, just marvelling at how beautiful and clear those waterfalls are. Interesting thing is, I always wondered why the background in Sonic 1 in Green Hill Zone looked extra chunky, you know, it's double pixels, and I kind of wonder whether it's to mask the artifacting that happens when you scroll the camera here. I don't know. I guess we talked about things being half the resolution behind. Oh, look at that, I just died. The graphics being half the resolution due to the transparent graphics in front of it, so they may have doubled the size of the pictures to kind of accommodate for that. I don't know. I can't speak for the developer's intent. All I can do is respect it with my entire soul and heart. We're going to look at one more game on the Mega Drive, and we'll jump over to that now. And of course, it can only be Streets of Rage 2 with its infamous dithered lights. So we're just going to play through this and get up to the lights. I always forget how far ahead they are. But again, you're not getting any of that horrible rainbowing, and you can mostly read everything that's on screen as well. You can barely see Blaze's portrait at the upper left. Same for Pua Garcia and Red Signal. I'm assuming that's what the R stands for. It should be coming up any second. Oh, there it is! Again, it is not perfect. These things tend to look really good in screenshots, but as soon as you start scrolling the screen, you can see that the dithering kind of makes the background look hazy. Maybe that's what they intended. Again, I can't speak for the developer. Maybe it is, but you can see how it affects Blaze's sprite when she walks behind. Just looks a little bit fuzzy. And look at the shadows appearing and disappearing underneath the table and chairs there. Again, you would see the exact same thing if you're using composite, so this has nothing to do with the RetroTINK's blur. But what I do want to point out is just how nice Electra's tights look if I actually let her come back on screen. Maybe she's wearing fishnets. If she is wearing fishnets, then maybe RGB is the way to go, because I feel like that's a better example of what fishnet stockings would look like. But let's just pretend that, like Blaze, she is wearing some kind of tights or stockings. And they didn't have the colours available in the palette to do the same sort of thing that they did with Blaze. Who knows? But anyway, that's enough. Electra's dead. So now here I am in the 240p test suite on the PS1. Same sort of deal as before. I scroll through the resolutions, the horizontal resolutions here, because your values might differ depending on the horizontal resolution. So I would experiment with these values, but we're going to look at the notch filter this time. So previously I think it was 1.7, 1.75 that I had for elliptic, but you can see that I have to go a lot further with notch to get the same kind of effect. It's a little bit harder with the scan lines. I think I do knock those off in a second to try and get things perfect, but perfect is a bad way to explain it, because if you try and aim for perfection with analog video, you are going to have a bad time. So we just take the scan lines off, get it as close as we can. We set to cubic horizontally, and then we put the scan lines back on, because I just think it sells the effect much better. And here we are in Silent Hill 1. This is running on an actual PS1. What I will say is I do think it makes the cutscenes look a little bit better, because it masks a lot of the macro blocking that you tended to see in these games. But the important thing is how things look in game. Here we are in the game. Now, Notch tends to have a bit of Notch Low has a bit of a ringing effect, which kind of looks like a sharpening effect on the right-hand side of any kind of transition between a light and dark color and vice versa. Again, I think this can kind of help. But what we'll do is we'll scroll through the other notch filters here. If I can find my remote. Come on, past Andy. Get your remote out. There we go. So this is notch plus low. And we're going to move over to notch wide. You can see this is a bit more of a blurry effect. And then notch... It's hard to... You've got eyes. Look at them. Look at the effects. Personally, I would say that notch plus low is the best one out of the notch filters, at least for that kind of analog CRT-like effect. Notch wide isn't too bad either. If I had to choose between everything for this sort of effect, I would actually just pick the elliptic one though. Now you might be thinking, hey, I can still see Dither in here. Well, even if you used a composite cable on the PS1, you'd still see an element of dithering, but what I'm going to show you right here is just how much of the dithering this effect removes when we turned it off entirely. Look at that. And turning it back on, you can see that it does actually get rid of a decent amount of the dithering. So, worth trying out. It's not perfect, but remember, there is no such thing as perfection in the analog realm. Now, one of the more interesting things that I've found is how, I don't want to say well, but how intriguing this effect can look on a console like the NES. Now, I'm going to hold my hands up and say that I've never owned an NES. I don't really know what the composite looks like in person or the RF looks like in person. I am aware that it has its own weirdness, but playing a game like Super Mario Bros. 2 here, I really like the way that it adds a little bit of accidental anti-aliasing on the mountains here, or the hill, platform, whatever, in the background. Yeah, get that mushroom. And the big thing is, if you set it up right, you can see here that, oh, look at that dither. It's perfectly blended, and as we know, where there is dither, the developers clearly intended for it to be blurred into oblivion. But overall, I think it's a cool little effect. So what I'm going to do now is leave you, and I'm just going to show some footage from a few games across different platforms, and you can make your own decisions. If you like it, cool. If you don't like it, guess what? You don't have to use it. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to hold my hands up right now and say that this effect isn't for me, but you may like it, and that is the most important thing of all. So enjoy the footage. Take care and goodbye.
That's disgusting.
This guy's been eviscerated. Something tore his intestines straight out.
Look at those tooth marks. It had to be some sort of animal.
Okay, let's move on.